Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Night Live. I have a great show for you tonight, and it is based off of a story that I heard last week. This woman was gone for 6 months, off the grid, doing one of the things on her bucket list. It was not in her routine. She did not have control of how much access to the kind of foods that she wanted. And yet she did this pilgrimage because she had lived through cancer and was super excited to say, I am not wasting another minute. But in that process, this woman with a broken metabolism who healed it enough to reverse her cancer was now in danger of confusing her liver. That she returned back from her pilgrimage, which is a story in and of itself that is inspiring. But in that return, within 48 hours, was back to nutritional ketosis. Tonight, we're going to explain to you how she took her confused liver, fought off cancer, and really then lived the life that she had put on hold for too many years. Her story is inspirational and one that I have just loved to show off in her success, but also in teaching through community and through showing up every week trying to get it right. So hats off to this woman, but also want to say thank you for letting us share your story. I checked my numbers right before the live started, and we have a blood sugar of 62, ketones of 3.5. I am going to talk specifically about those fasts that I do every week, and what that has to do at all with what I do about my liver. I'll tell you, confused livers mean broken metabolisms. It's what we are teaching to reverse on this channel. I love the lesson that I've got outlined tonight. So stick around. We're going to start at a cellular level and get all the way to, again, what do I do in this story? How do I keep my liver from not being confused? All right, let's get into this. I do want to just take a quick second to say thanks for all those folks that check in and really help me do this show. Last week, you saved me from a sound issue. My tech guy is still doing a wonderful travel abroad, something on his bucket list. And a DVR tonight, yes, Deb Sager, thanks for typing that in, of 17. This peak performance isn't what I live. I mean, this isn't every day. You're going to learn what it is that motivates me to do this and why you might want to jump on the bandwagon of figuring out why the process of checking those numbers and pushing my metabolism is that way. If you do tell me where you're from, I really do like to see the places where the folks tuning in are from. So in the chat, again, if you're here on the live chat, there are no commercials and I answer your questions. So as I go through this lesson today, if you have a confused liver and a question, type it in and my team puts that at the top of my list at the end to try and address the questions that I might not have closed the loop on for a live. Let's get right started to it because I love this story. This woman, this is the beautiful liver. This is a liver that's not confused. And when this woman came to see me, her liver didn't look like this. Her liver looked a lot more like this. Meaning she was about 60 pounds overweight. She had not had cancer once, but has been to that relapse moment that was unexpected. She has been given the news that she had weeks to live. And yet, my God, just a story that's so inspirational that it was not all on her own. She used some really good doctors to help her along the way, but she took control of her liver. What we're going to talk about tonight isn't just that she had reached for a bucket list and did it, but what about being in nutritional ketosis and returning to it so quickly is just this pocket of very valuable information that I want you to learn from her story. Because most people that are women who've birthed babies, who've been, 50, 60 pounds overweight, and of course, her metabolism was broken enough to have cancer, that how did she get her liver to do the right thing, which was to continually see ketones. When I look at her story, part of what she did while away was to make sure her body never went a day without seeing ketones. And she didn't have, like I said, she was on a pilgrimage. She was on a place where she didn't control what the grocery stores have in them, sometimes not having access to that. But I mean, she had lived through this story that she had a death sentence right in front of her. She has a young son who she didn't want to leave in the wake of orphanage. And he was an adult, but still a young adult who still needs their parents. Ask me how I know. And as she said, okay, finally, my life had the reversal of cancer. I'm going to do those things that I said I didn't have time for. So this pilgrimage was a really big part of her soul about how she was going to do this. And as she headed off, I said, oh, no. You've got a broken metabolism. You have a liver that's been so easily confused. And although you've had a major win, it will go right back to confused if you go days on end without seeing ketones. So she did a two-part packing list. One of them was the liquid ketones called Pucker Up, which the only thing that's in that is liquid ketones. And the other thing she used was the highest concentration of ketones that are there, which is a ketone powder. And in her daily routine, she would have that raspberry powder in the morning, and she would have a Pucker Up in the afternoon. She did this for all 6 months. And it wasn't perfect, okay? She came back a dozen pounds heavier. She came back with a liver that was not as perfect as before. But if I look at the number of people who have been exposed to that, I would say rugged of a menu, and were able to return to nutritional ketosis in 48 hours, it's because she followed the rules. Let's go through those rules. All right, going back to my slides here. All right, so here's what her liver looks like if she does slip off the wagon. But more importantly, when you look at the cellular benefits that are hidden deep inside her body, when you put ketones back in circulation, there are things that happen at a microscopic level, and she took advantage of those. First of all, she's a cancer survivor. She has insulin resistance, not just by definition, but I mean, she has insulin resistance by definition, and then enough to have cancer 3 times. She's had babies, she's been overweight, and she had a life that was super stressful, traveling around, being a consultant, but not in her own routine, not in her own rhythm. And, almost struggling to say goodbye to that life until somebody waves this flag of cancer in front of you. And then she's like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. And, to be privileged to sit in the room where people feel that reframing of life, as a physician, as a human, it is a privilege. But it's also those places where you say, I wonder in my life, what I'm going to push back and say, dang, why did I not just slow down and do that dream I'd always had? And as she had this dream of getting better, she won. As she got the reversal of the cancer, she had amazing news. She's had amazing follow-ups that show very little. I mean, I think it's complete. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I really think the last one showed no return of the cancer again. And so she said, I'm doing the things on my bucket list. I'm going to go on this pilgrimage. And as she headed out, I said, all right, we're going to talk about some important news that you need to remember. Number 1, liver cells are weird. They are easily confused. They're going to be the first ones to, right after fat cells, to feel insulin resistance. But those liver cells are going to also be your hero. They are the ones that make ketones. And when the liver cell sees ketones in circulation, it does this backup plan. It makes ketones and holds them present. So liver cells are, they have this this sonogram, this signaling for, is there a ketone in circulation? And when ketones are there, they make more ketones. So ketones beget ketones is a saying that I talk about, and you're going to understand that more fully as we get to the end of this lecture. More importantly, her liver cells can't wake up from insulin resistance and make ketones, especially in 48 hours, if they don't see them. The mechanisms that are used to burn that as a fuel, to continue to make that as a fuel, really important in her metabolism, in the strength of her metabolism. The second thing is, what do we worry about in most cancer patients? We worry that they are going to have an infection. Their white blood cells, we pummeled the heck out of it. She did use, all of the benefits of the 21st century medicine in America, but that also, it caused her immune system to be fragile. So we know that white blood cells in the presence of ketones are more efficient at fighting off infection. Now, this presence of ketones doesn't matter if the ketones are made by you or if they're supplemented by you. Now, she knows, and I know, that the supplemental ketones are only going to last a few hours. But the key thing was she left with a body that was in shape, a metabolism that was strong, a liver that was not confused. And if you want to see a liver go back to insulin resistance, deny it from seeing ketones for the better part of 6 months. So on her pilgrimage, the worst thing she could have done was to say, no ketones around, I'm fine, I'm living out my dream. But that's not how her body works. That reversal, people with insulin resistance, especially those, she's in her mid 60s. If you're looking at how quickly that insulin resistance returns, man, ask every woman that's been on the ketogenic diet how many weeks they can go by before their ketones slump back down to 0.2, 0.3. I've been there. Every woman I've ever taken care of has been there. Many men have been there. But for sure, this woman had that risk. So we go back to the white blood cells. So liver cells, super important. White blood cells, second big thing is we must keep them working efficiently, keeping those infections out, or she's going to end up back home due to an infection. And finally, the last one is her heart cells. Heart cells directly take up ketones and use that to keep that blood pressure controlled, to keep the contractility of the heart strong. We'll put in the show notes a couple of the research articles that look at how we know that these exogenous ketones in circulation do these things and more. Now let's get over to more. Next slide. All right, so this is just one of the demonstrations that I want you to see. As we look at, I think I'm going to use this slide. There we go. As we look at a liver that is taking on fat, MCT or consumption of fat, those fatty strings end up in your liver, and you'll see out the top there that the ketones are produced from that. 99% of the ketones in circulation for anybody, when it's produced by the body, come out of the liver. The liver is got this weird set of mitochondria. They make most of our ketones. And when they're insulin resistant, they're stubborn, and they go right back to storing food in a hurry unless you keep routinely exposing them to ketones. So again, this woman's routine was that she had a scoop of raspberry lemonade in the morning. She had them in little baggies and just separating them out. So she had her daily dose. And then in the afternoon, she'd have pucker up. Now I'll tell you, there's more ketones in the raspberry lemonade production than there is the pucker up. So the highest concentration of ketones, maybe per dollar, is the raspberry lemonade. And she had had enough to get her through the 6 months that she was going to be gone. And this is the other thing. What I would have done is to tell her to take strings of fat that make higher ketones, which is the C8, C10. That wasn't in her plan. It was a little harder to travel with the oil. The soft gels have a longer shelf life, but it was not as easy for her as this program was. So here's what's happening inside those cells. I've shown you this before, but I just want anybody new to the channel to see, yes, triglycerides come in, and what those liver ketones do is, liver mitochondria do is make ketones. When I look at the key component to a healthy mitochondria is it produces a bunch of energy. And of course, that's the beautiful part of her story, that I have, hundreds, maybe at least hundreds of patients post chemo that can't get out of bed, that don't want to get up to make their bed. That life after chemo can be really fatiguing. And if you've just been around the sun 60 times, you can see that some days just being 60 can have that heavy of fatigue. When you ask those cells to work for you, they have to have this ability to flex and turn energy into into fuel, and that healthy mitochondria, that non-confused liver, was able to take substrates of both glucose and fat and turn them into very efficient energy. All right, so step one was that cellular level. She is doing things that are really keeping her body from reversing. But at a whole body level, this is where the story is. I don't know how you see this without being a provider, a physician or a nurse practitioner or somebody watching people age with these setbacks, watching people say, yeah, I got cancer, but I'm fighting it. And then knowing that the only people who get to fight it and then go on to do things on their bucket list, they have to restore their metabolism. They have to return the energy production to a higher, more youthful version of them. So the worst thing that you can do is go too far away from that path. So the woman walks in again after 6 months, and I had prayed for her, and again used her story so many times to say, do not let the death sentence of you have 12 weeks to live be what is your answer. Now she really had a group of support around her, and my goodness, her constitution for staying the course is like none other. Her faith is really strong. But she was, when she walked in the door, she was a dozen pounds heavier than she was 6 months ago. But the remarkable part is she wasn't 50 pounds heavier. When patients go through a season of really high stress, cortisol dominates. It wins. And that high cortisol state saying, hey, you might die, you might die, you might die, you're not sleeping well. That is just the enemy for making a healthy liver, a non-confused liver, a metabolism that's youthful and strong again. So to know that was coming as she walked in the door, I'm so proud of her for only being a dozen pounds heavier than she was when she left. And then she said these words, I came back and I was really worried. How would my body do now that I'm back home and in control of my food, and I'm, doing what I'm supposed to do, and I have the privilege of, 21st century in America? The answer was 48 hours later, she was back into nutritional ketosis. That is amazing. I have some folks that, especially with the high stress, the life after chemo, they're not only a dozen pounds up, they're 2, 3, 4 times that, and their energy slumps, and we can put them back on a sardine fast, and they're still going to be 4, 5, 6 days of sardines before we see the first ketone. When that mechanism deep inside the cells is so distant in the evolution of those cells, you're gonna struggle to make your first ketone. So that she had a nutritional ketosis within 48 hours of back in her American diet, or the diet she had control over. That's a huge sign that she wins. All right, so let's say, what she was doing by taking those supplements routinely for 6 months is she was saying keto adjacent. And of course, what I worried about is inside those cells, those confused cells, was not that healthy mitochondria, but this mitochondria, the mitochondria that's got holes in it. And when we put energy into, these cells, the energy doesn't go all the way into a beautiful production of ATP. It spreads out. It causes inflammation of the liver. It causes inflammation of the body, bones, joints, and brain. And the number of mitochondria that are broken get higher the longer you go without a stage of ketosis. That I use this balancing act to say, okay, when mitochondria only use ketones, only use glucose, their engine burns hot. It is not as easy to repair. It's quicker to burn down. It's like, driving that stick shift in first gear all through the interstate. And when you drive it so hot, something's going to break. When people spend time with only burning glucose, and man, is that easy to do when you're stressed out, not sleeping well. And again, on this place where she didn't have the best control of what foods she got to eat, the only place her body got to see ketones is she dosed it twice a day. She put the powder in the morning. She put the pucker in at the end of the day. Again, a smarter way to do that would have been feed her and a cheaper way to do it, but it didn't travel as well for her. Is the ketones that are that come in a fat form. So that's MCT, C8, C10. Okay, so here she was. Ketones in circulation beget ketones. But more importantly, they suppressed her appetite. So as she's doing her life, taking on some volunteer roles and some, world of unknowns, she was able to suppress her appetite twice a day, keeping that in check. Not perfect, but in check. And by golly, anybody who's taken oral ketones, had supplements, if you can listen carefully, if you can not get swept away by your own emotions, those ketones in circulation, you can feel the suppression of appetite. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. I do want to just make sure this gets go here. I want to say there we go. Hold on. I want to just make this a little smaller. There you go. All right. So this next part, the oral ketones, not IV ketones, are what I want to talk about next. And again, I'll put this in the study in the link below. This comes out of the research from actually the team that Dom D'Agostino leads and teaches through what does an advanced ketogenic diet do at a cellular level and on humans. And number one, if you swallowed the ketones, again, these were not made by ketones made by your liver. If you swallowed the ketones, and this did not work when we gave them IV, it would suppress the post-meal glucose. Post-meal glucose is, again, one of those big predictors of how your body handles how much insulin response comes from food, how the cells are using fuel, getting it into the right spot. And that fuel does include glucose. Just because ketones are in circulation doesn't mean all the cells are using ketones. It's kind of a mosaic of which cells get to use a ketone, which cells don't. And what you want happening is that at least a crop of cells are always getting exposure to ketones, staying active, that they can use that. When you swallow the ketones, it did suppress that post-meal glucose, and that was not possible when they were given the ketones intravenously. The second thing that happens was shocking when I was reading this. Let's go to this side, actually, a little easier for folks to read. Was that it did these three hormones. Okay, it increased the GIP hormone. It actually decreased the GLP-1, and that is something I'll talk through, and it increased the glucagon. Okay, so first of all, if you've heard me talk about GLP-1s and the impact that they've had on patients that are in a ketogenic state, the 21-day course that we did in January, we offered a 12-week kind of experiment to say what happens if we give microdosing of GLP-1s. And I told folks I've said this many times, and the pin chasers have heard this way too many times, that the first generation of those GLP-1s was like Ozempic, and that has one hormone in it. That's the GLP-1s. And it had a lot of side effects. It really shut down their gut, and some folks just could not tolerate it. And it did a pretty good job of lowering glucose. It suppressed appetite for sure. The second generation, which is the tirzepatide that's out there, that's also called Mounjaro, that increased GIP and it increased GLP-1. And so it has two hormones at play. When you look at this IV, why oral ketones increased the GIP and it suppressed the GLP-1. Again, several of the folks doing the research suggested that the use of that GLP was quicker in their postprandial hormone checks. But if you've been on tirzepatide, if you know anybody who's been on tirzepatide, it does a powerful hormonal impact on the way they think about food, the food noise. Some of my favorite case studies that I've been able to see is it raises the bed of ketones that the liver is producing by about 30%. And that grows. Like the longer the ketones were in circulation, the better they did. It doesn't conjure ketones out of nowhere. They had to be really working at a ketogenic diet to get these responses. But when you've got folks like this lady who's in her mid-60s, she needs to have a strong state of ketosis. We are fighting cancer in her case. We cannot afford for her to fall off the wagon for 6 months and then try again. Not only will that break her spirit and her confidence, but it also, there's a timer. Those cells, those broken mitochondria, continue to destroy every day that went without a constant production of ketones. So these hormones that suppress and change appetite, they're a game changer. But one of my favorite things to talk about is what's coming out in the future, which is a peptide that has increased GLP-1, increased GIP, and increased glucagon. So let me just go back to the slide here and say, yeah, that's what happens when you took in oral ketones, not IV. Yes, the GLP was down, the GLP-1 was down, but it is thought that it is the increased consumption of that one. And again, the studies are small, and these hormones are really touchy to talk about. But it's the increased glucagon that I think will be such an incredible process for the next generation of these peptides, because of how it improves their focus, it improves their mental energy. I can geek out and tell you more about what it does for the circulating fatty acids when you take all three of these hormones and you raise them, especially in a state where the patient's already ketogenic. That's what's been mind-blowing for me, to watch patients that I'm like, I don't know how to do this without putting you in locking you in a cell and saying, we're only going to feed you, mealworms because they're high in fat and protein, 80% fat and protein, and that's the only thing you get to eat. No, that's not what we do. These hormones really allow the patient to have such better control of the food that they're putting in there. And that in turn is what keeps their liver from reversing in process. Don't slide backwards while you're on your pilgrimage, lady. We want you to enjoy your life, but do not let that metabolic disease sneak back into your body. It's going to start in the liver. You're going to know it because you can't make a ketone for weeks on end when they get back from being off the wagon. And when you continually keep ketones in circulation, you can see that impact not only on the minimal weight gain she had with 6 months in the wild. I mean, really the wild. But also that her cancer reports and her symptoms and her energy and her just drive for life, it's inspiring to watch this woman and what she was able to accomplish. So hats off. First of all, we have one more layer that I want to talk about. Oh, we're going to go to this actually. Before I tell you what the third layer, I want to say thank you for everybody that last week bought our beef liver. Yes, we're talking about a confused liver tonight. I'm going to click on my shop over here. I think my pop-up is already shown off here. I do want to see if I've got that commercial. Yeah, buy 4 for the price of 3. Again, we have some freeze-dried liver pills that I am selling, and they expire in September. If you don't buy them, my family and I are going to be the ones eating them or using them. We are still using this sale, and I just want to say thank you for anybody that has filled their cupboard with them. If you want to learn more about why I care so much about liver, you can go back to last week's show. We edited the technical difficulties out of there. The other part that I want to give everybody a heads up on is it is Prime Week on Amazon. And I am happy to say that we have some deals on Amazon. So if you go to the Dr. Boz store on Amazon, we have some really great deals for you. One of them is beef liver, but it's not nearly as good of a deal as it is on my website. But the other ones that are out there are, I think, our raspberry lemonade, which is difficult to put on sale because it is already, this is the beef liver one. I wonder how I go to, there's a way I can, let's go home, and then here's what I want. It's hard for me to put this on sale any further than we already have it. And if you are thinking of buying any of those supplements, there is a price increase coming in the next probably 6 weeks. So stock up. This is this deal that's on Amazon is the cheapest you'll ever see the raspberry lemonade. So I would highly encourage you to do that. I have taken on the task of being in Amazon. It is just such a huge marketplace for selling product and for having products that do win. They do help patients. It also supports the channel. Right now it's barely supporting the channel because the margins have changed so much that we are going to have to raise prices. So if you if you want the advantage, here it is for the next few weeks before we raise prices. And anybody who buys something on Amazon, please, please, please take time to leave a review. You cannot believe how powerful those reviews are. So if you're trying to say you like the stuff that we do, the messages that we put out, you like the work we put into these lives and our videos, yeah, leave us a review if you've ever bought from us on Amazon. They do require that you buy before you can leave a review. So if you haven't done that, know that we will. You don't. Your review doesn't end up on there if you leave one without ever buying. So they're pretty savvy about that. So this was the thing I wanted to point out. So here's this gal who is about 5'6", and her 10 pounds had taken her from the green zone to the yellow zone. And it is still one of those things. I know having a chart for height and weight leaves lots to be discerned, but man, oh man, would I still put my weight, no pun intended, but would still put the impact on especially what happens in an aging person. How confused is their liver? I don't know. How lean are they? It is not everything, but it is one metric that really does help us to see, how many mitochondria are leaking? How many mitochondria are efficiently taking those fuels and turning them into energy? And that BMI, I wish it wasn't as powerful as it is, but it is. All right, final thing that we're going to cover is, why do I supplement? Yes, I supplement. Yesterday I had raspberry lemonade that was at the house. I did not have any pucker up, and I forgot how good it tastes. It does have over 9 millimoles. And again, when you're comparing apples to apples, the raspberry lemonade is the highest concentration of ketones that we sell. The pucker up is sour, and it does make you think that it has the highest concentration, but truly it's the raspberry lemonade that has the highest concentration of ketones. The other powders are right behind it, but I think it was very wise of this woman to put the highest dose of ketones in the morning, and that has a little stevia in it. It's easier to tolerate. And one of my favorite recipes is to add some heavy whipping cream and ice, and then sip on it. Because the two reasons I supplement, and you see me show up to this live with a fasting blood sugar in the 60s and a ketone of 2 point something. That's hard, okay? It is hard to do that every week. I am just as human as you. I am just as tempted as you. And when I look at some of the privileges you get of being a physician, you get to see front and center what it looks like for the brain not to work as they age. You get to see what ALS does to somebody, what multiple sclerosis does to their quality of life. Their bucket list goes out the window. When I look at the research done on Alzheimer's disease and say, yeah, they needed to start sweeping that trash up decades ago. But now that they're here, I mean, the studies on there say, yeah, 3 times a day, putting those ketones, I mean, our patient with cancer on her pilgrimage needed to do it twice a day. But the Alzheimer's patients, it appears to be 3 times a day that those short-acting ketones get added to circulation. And the longer they do that, the better their liver works the next days. Now, not if they do it one day, it's better the next day. They have to be consistently, just like this patient was, delivering the ketones at a regular interval. And her liver is easy to confuse. It's got lots of disease that's been in that body. But the power of her, she was keto adjacent is the best way to say that, to stave it off. I don't have cancer in my body, I hope, or if I do, it's hopefully I'm making it go away by continually stressing my body. So let's look at this. Why do I supplement? Yes, I supplement because of brains and cancer. When it comes to brains, there are 2 major ways that fuel gets across that blood-brain barrier. Ketones are pushed across the blood-brain barrier, and glucose is pulled across the blood-brain barrier. I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. Because I have a slide and a study that has, it was what taught that to me, but also it helps you to see exactly what I'm talking about there. When I look at the peak amount of ketones matter. So on Mondays, I do a fast, and the fast is hard. It's not this easy thing that I just kind of waddle into and say, yeah, I fast every week. No, I get to Monday afternoon, and if I haven't written the show, you can tell the next day, because I have to rope in the the concentration and, reread a study or make sure I have an outline that makes sense. So you get something that's not scatterbrained. When you look at peak ketones in circulation, it correlates to peak ketones in the brain as well. That especially because in my body, I do expose my body to regular ketones. If I'm crabby, if I'm irritated, I'm going to take ketones on Monday afternoon. In fact, you could guarantee every Monday afternoon when I'm in the middle of the hardest time of transitioning from, the glucose that's in the 70s to 80s to glucose that's in the 65s, which is where autophagy is better. It's where my brain gets to clean up trash. It is important that I stress my body routinely. That's how you get results, is you need routine stress required. I don't mean the cortisol kind of stress that's chronic stress. I mean a peak performance from my system. And I'm human and I get crabby and I've got 3 companies I run and kids and a husband, and I've got all the same pressures you guys do. So it is, if I'm going to try to write a show, I'm going to pre-dose that writing with some ketones. But that Monday fast is hard. It is easy for me to fall off the wagon, to cheat just a little bit, and then my numbers are not as good as they are today. I start my fast every Sunday after a Sunday meal with the family, and Sunday's not hard. Even Monday is not that hard until about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I know that my consistency for being able to push through that really dangerous time it is totally because I supplement. I put ketones in circulation. I can feel the relief, the suppression of appetite, the brain power improves. I'm not quite as snappy with the team around here, and they've learned to leave me alone until I've done that. I also know that there's a long game being played in my brain. How do I know if I'm supposed to get Parkinson's? How do I know if I am supposed to, if I've got the genetics for Alzheimer's disease? Well, I don't have the genetics for Alzheimer's disease, but it doesn't mean you don't get it. It is how many times did I go into my brain and clean up the trash? And that means in my system, I need to focus on the long game. I need to look at that. I mean, the other part that I talk about with coaches and students that take the 21-day is when I can push those ketones high, it protects the breakdown of my muscles. That I'm okay at working out. I go through seasons of good and bad. Hurricanes apparently take me completely off the rails for months on end. But the protection for muscle mass is correlated to how well you keep ketones in circulation. And there's several studies that I've reviewed on different episodes looking at that. This is how you keep your muscles protected, is that they must be exposed to ketones routinely. So I don't have any muscle mass to spare, and I'm not a big gym rat. I do resistant training, but not enough to build muscles the way I should. So I'm going to keep every muscle present that I have, which means routine exposure to ketones for my muscles as well. Okay, let's go back over here. All right, so yes, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease is the long game, but the second one is cancer. And as many of you know, my mom suffered from cancer that we never expected. I like to think her cancer was CLL. It's what I wrote the book Any Way You Can about. And her story has saved as many lives as maybe this story is saving for, but her story was back in 2015, and she was getting the best care medicine can deliver. I was delivering it, and her cancer grew. And I still believe that there was this autoimmune process going on that was facilitating her cancer to live. And it wasn't until she was routinely she made ketones way better than I did. She was way more strict than I was. And it was impressive to see her reverse age, to see her vitality grow. And although I don't want the cancer, I want the life, the energy she had in that season before COVID swept into her lungs and suffocated her. That cancer story and how vital she was by fighting cancer with a liver that was no longer confused. And my goodness, she was as routine about those supplements as any of my patients. In fact, I said, I don't think you need to do it that often. It was before I knew as much as I know about ketones now. I'm like, but what she needed it for was to stop from sliding backwards, stop from the social pressures, because nobody around her in rural South Dakota was doing a ketogenic diet in 2015. But every month she did a better job. She took back another little section of her brain. She took back another section of her energy. And I routinely stress my system because I don't want cancer. And I expect that if there is cancer growing, that it's going to have a tough time living in my system. I do want to show you this one slide before I bounce off. Oh, this is just another way to say, yeah, when people burn glucose, let's go over here actually. When people burn glucose, that is where that constant burn leads to increased tissue growth. That's not always a good thing. Aging and death. Oopsie, that's not what I meant to do. Let's go back to here. And when you look at ketones, and when the body routinely sees ketones, it cools down those mitochondria, gives them a different fuel to use, has less cracks and breaks in those mitochondria, and that's what leads to that longevity, the maintenance cleanup that is the reversal of those chronic diseases, and any repair that we can try to undo. This is the study that I wanted you to look at. Again, notice the dates, times, and who did this study. When you've got ketones in circulation, these two fuels of glucose, that's the little, let's see, I'll blow it up for you a little bit here. That's the little rhomboid red things there. And then the ketones are the little blue guys, both in circulation. They get across this blood-brain barrier in two ways. I have two receptors hanging out there. One of them is the way that glucose comes across by being pulled. That means the brain has to signal it has to, you can almost like siphon or call it across, whereas ketones have a different receptor altogether. It's called an MCT. That does not stand for medium chain triglycerides. I think it's mono something cellular transporter. And that receptor is what lifts those ketones from one side of the blood-brain barrier to the other. This is one of the landmark studies that showed us that the brain does prefer ketones when they're present. The key thing there is that little receptor goes to sleep, down-regulates when it never sees a ketone. So some of the reasons I get such great results for my fasting now is because I've been doing it a long time, that my body goes, seasons, and I mean, there's hardly a day in there it doesn't see a ketone. Even when I'm screwing up and having, bread or, something. I went to Iceland and there was my favorite dessert, my favorite treat is black licorice. And it's like the land of black licorice. So I had way too much black licorice, but I brought along the ketones and just made sure my body did not go weeks on end without seeing that. All right. So again, thank you for those who are going to get over to your questions. Again, as you've been typing them in, my team has compiled several of them over here. We're going to try to get through all of them. I only have about 15 minutes left for the hour, and I am doing something super fun tonight. My husband and son and our Chinese daughter, we are going to the prequel for Superman. So we're going to the IMAX theater. It's an early release of Superman, and it comes out later this week, but this is one of those, I don't know, there was a lottery or something, and we got got 4 tickets, and we're going to go see Superman. So I know as soon as I'm done here, I get to eat, and then I get to go to Superman. All right, so first of all, let's go to your questions here. We're going to start with Karen, who writes in and says, do you think it's better to cleanse a liver? Do you think it is better to cleanse a liver? Water fast or liver cleanse drinks you purchase from functional? Okay, so I will tell you, I am not trying to ruin anybody's business here, but those liver cleanses, okay, livers have rules. They are there to store and deliver and process energy for the body. And to cleanse it means that you need to empty it. I do not support people fasting longer than 72 hours. Again, I've done that, but the return on what you get from fasting for longer than 72 hours is minimal after the 72 hours. And lots of folks that watch this show are north of 60 years old. So as you age, there is diminishing returns for the extended fast. But I will contend that there should be a 72-hour fast, or at least reach into the 60s. I mean, one of the reasons I look at my sugars in the morning, or I wear a continuous glucose monitor, is I want to see when I hit 65. 65 is this universal signal to the universe that you've emptied out the glycogen storage in the liver. Now, it's going to fill back up again if you have a diseased liver, a confused liver. But when you keep emptying it time and time and time again, that's what cleans a liver. You don't cleanse a liver in one session. It's a big, vital organ. It's got the word live in it because the Latin version is it is the life inside us, and it is there to hold and filter and reprocess nutrients. And cleansing it doesn't come from those drinks. No, you cleanse it by getting your blood sugars down to 65, and not in one whole swoop. You don't start out with blood sugars in the 120s and 130s and then the next day wake up with a 65 blood sugar. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a fast that slowly lowers the blood sugar. And again, I wouldn't recommend that right out of the gate. We teach this in the 21-day. I do have another announcement that I forgot to say earlier, that you're going to want to tune in starting on the 22nd. If you have any interest in the next class for the 21-day, there's going to be some secrets told then. I'll try not to give them away just yet, but I really appreciate you guys that show up for the live, and the juicy announcements always come at the end of the show. So thanks for sticking around, and you're really going to want to be here for the one on the 22nd. Okay, so back to Karen's thing. If you want a healthy liver, you need to work it out. It means you need to empty it, let it fill back up, empty it, let it fill back up. And if you don't have a continuous glucose monitor, that is something that tool is very powerful in the world of tools. Let me just show you something here. I want to go to, let me do this, go to our website. So on the Dr. Boz channel, if you push on Dr. Boz favorites, and then you go to this continuous glucose monitor, that's how me and the team at Meaningful Medicine offer a prescription for a continuous glucose monitor for a year. And it doesn't mean you need to use it for a year, but this is a touchless process where you can get a continuous glucose monitor, the kind that you can calibrate, the kind that I use, the kind that I recommend in patients. And if you've never done this, it's a heck of an experiment. You want to see if you have a clean liver? Watch to see, did you empty your liver while you were sleeping? That is a liver cleanse. I know I beat that to death, but okay, bye. Okay, go back over here, go back over here. All right. I think I answered your question, Karen, that watch your blood sugars. Will says, did they take the ketones before the meal or after the meal? So I recommend it before the meal. Again, that appetite suppression is not an accident, and consumption, or the volume of consumption, is still one of the biggest things we fight. Again, the IV ketones didn't do this, but the oral ketones were very impressive at how it flexes the levers of hormones. That, the GIP went up, the GLP went down. Again, it's thought to be that it is increasing the consumption of the GLP during that time that they were testing, and that glucagon was enhanced. That is what this next generation of GLP-1s, those are all the three hormones that are flexed when they use this. I think the name of that one is retatrutide or something like that. Maybe there's more than one, but it's the most impressive thing I've seen in medicine. I can't wait for that one for my Parkinson's patients to use that one because of the brain data. Anyway, so take it before the meal. That's what I do. I don't have any data on that. Just have my experience from patients on that. All right, back to questions. Soothsayer S. Can taking ketones help me get into and stay in ketosis? I'm trying to lose weight. Yeah, I hope that by the end of that lecture, you got to see what I was getting at there, Soothsayer. I feel like I'm at the weight that I'm supposed to be at, but I've had seasons where I was not at that weight, and losing the weight was hard. Why did I not lose weight? Because I went longer and longer and longer with times without ketones being in circulation. You get on a bandwagon that's going well, and you're like, yeah, ride that wave. But the weight loss, one of the best experiments I did was I was struggling. We were moving from states. I just could not get a rhythm. And so I said, all right, I think this was right when we were moving. So I had to be 2021. So I said, all right, I'm just going to take a raspberry lemonade every day at 1 o'clock for the next 7 days. I'm going to wake up the next morning and I'm going to measure my ketones. And my ketones were like 0.2, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.1. I mean, I'm insulin resistant and I just did not have the life to be able to stress my metabolism. And so I just couldn't get the engine roaring. So the first day I did it, the next morning I wake up and my ketones were like 0.4. And that's nothing. That's still barely nutritional, not even nutritional ketosis, but it was higher than what it had been. So I had a little hope. So I go about the next day and I do at 1 o'clock, mix up the cream, ice, and a scoop of the raspberry lemonade ketones. And the next day they were 0.6. And I think they were there for a couple of days, but by the 5th day, they were by the 7th day, I was at 1.1 ketones. Now, the ketones I'm swallowing only last 2 to 4 hours, maximum 2 to 4 hours. They go in circulation. They do this signaling thing that I've been talking about. They improve the contractility of your heart. They make your white blood cells be a little more efficient at fighting infection. They do all those things I was talking about. And then they go away. Okay, you pee them out. They don't stick around. You can't store them. So there's no way there were ketones that I swallowed were still present the next day. It was blood ketones I was measuring. But that ketones in circulation beget ketones is what was happening in real time for me. By the end of the week, I had lost like 3 pounds. And maybe that's no big deal to everybody else, but if you've ever been a woman stuck not losing weight, and I felt great. Now, is that the only way to lose weight? No. But the longer you go in the ditch, the harder it is to get out of the ditch. Why was I so proud of this woman who went on her voyage after she got cancer? Because it would have been so easy for her to fall in the ditch, gain 50 pounds, get to live out this life dream, but then end up with a funeral as she got back. And she didn't. She has her life here. I mean, I just am so proud for her. I'm so thankful she shared her story. All right, let's get back to questions. Dar says, if a person is new to ketosis, should they avoid this? No. In fact, one of the reasons why exogenous ketones, like whenever we do the 21 day, we're trying to be better at, there's so many people that are new when they come on that 21 day. We want them to have ketones in circulation for like the 5 days before we start. Because then as we drop their carbs and we really push them into nutritional ketosis, we really give their mitochondria a workout. They know what to do with a ketone, okay? The mechanical, those receptors that have been downregulated because your body hasn't seen ketones in years. I mean, that's part of what the keto flu is that the transition is gooey, it's messy, it's not slick and crisp. You don't just burst into ketosis unless you've been swallowing ketones. So there's this chapter in my workbook called the 200 Club. If they've had more than 200 carbs per day and they have all these metabolic problems, high blood pressure, overweight, headaches, migraines, cancer, diabetes, prediabetes, obesity, sleep apnea, any of those, and they're taking in more than 200 carbs per day, and I'm going to slam them down to 20 carbs per day. Oh, they are not going to like me. Okay, so I say, don't do that. Get some BHB, sip on it for 7 days, 2 to 3 doses for 7 days. And in that time, start throwing stuff away. Throw away the processed food, throw away the carbs, throw away the rice, throw away the potatoes, throw away that quinoa, all the stuff that you thought was this super healthy, you were being fine because it was low fat. That is not what you're doing on a ketogenic diet. It does take a bit to get your brain around it, but more importantly, it takes a bit to get the mitochondria ready for the transition. And so my favorite trick is, if they've ever failed, and I think we've all failed, getting back on the wagon is ketones in circulation. And the amount of research, I wish I could cover it all on here, but there's some of it that gets blocked by YouTube. But it's real science. It's done by, the folks at USF here. Dom and his team are just some of the spokespeople that kind of megaphone the ketone science across the globe, not just across the country. But it's scary stuff. And so YouTube doesn't like me to talk about it. But I do talk about it in the 21 day. So yes, you should you should ease into it. And I'll tell you, I learned that falling off the wagon is the biggest enemy. I mean, time isn't on my side either. I'm 53. I want to, I know that I'm on the second half of life, and I do want the second half to be enjoyable, full of life, the vigor that my mom found after cancer took it away. All right. I think I know this person. I use Dr. Bob's exogenous ketones twice a day. Can I overdo exogenous ketones? I finally got my fasting ketones up from 0.4 to 1.2. Now, after 10 days, do I keep going? Great question. So the answer is, what's your budget? I mean, I know people, it's expensive. And again, if I'm going to have to raise prices, they're going to get more expensive. I promise you that I try to keep prices as low as possible, because I'm all about, would my mother be able to afford this? And I look back at somebody who is just finally, especially I think this person is a woman, when they finally get their ketones in circulation moving along and doing what's supposed to. Now I need you working on behavior. So it doesn't mean that you never do ketones again. It's that, I mean, you can't slam somebody into reverse gear and say, now, have everybody in your life not offer you tempting stuff, never screw it up, quit eating after sunset. I mean, the amount of rules that it takes to be me. I mean, I'm pretty good at this. I've been at it a decade. I did not get here quickly. But the fastest journey, especially if time isn't on your side, is don't fall off the wagon. So morning fasting ketones are super important. One of the hacks is to the cheapest hack is C8C10. I mean, that is by far, when I look at my Alzheimer's patients and the kids come and say, what do I do for mom? She's in a nursing home, she can't think. I'm like, get her to take 21 of these. It's a lot. It's not a little amount. It takes a good section. That's a lot to swallow, but it takes a lot of fat in order to transition them into ketones. Those ketones from the fat last for 8 hours. So a handful of C8C10 is probably cheaper, more sustainable, and I mean there's no stevia or anything else in it, so it's just fat. But you can't get away with just 2. You start out with a few, and then you keep going. And most problems with the memory studies where the fat was so high that they got diarrhea. Now you have a demented person who's pooping their pants. That's a mess. Okay, so you got to be careful on how high you go up and how fast you go up. But that's the longest production of ketones. That keeps their ketones up for 6 to 8 hours. When I do a fast every week, I might need the hiccup to get through some of the tough points. So I might do 2 or 3 supplements in that fast. But my ketones stay high for 2 to 3 days afterwards. I mean, my liver got a really good workout. So it's not that you say, okay, I got ketones in circulation, now take away the supplements. You got ketones in circulation, now how strong are the other skills? Because I didn't wake up fasting for 60 plus hours every week. No, it took me seasons to get here. I didn't wake up using the sauna my husband uses it 5 to, I meant 2 times a week. Okay, whatever, that's as good as I can do. The levers that I pull to keep ketones high, I do good in some seasons and not in the other. So to say, could you overdose on them? As long as you are, the short-acting ketones, no. The MCT C8C10 overdose looks like diarrhea. Meaning your body just couldn't absorb that much fat, so back off on it. Know that the studies for dementia were 45 grams of that fat. So that's 45 of these a day. It's really hard to overdose on that. And then ketones can't be stored. You pee them out. Now, ketoacidosis is a thing, but you don't get there by denying carbohydrates and pushing exogenous ketones. They're short acting. They stimulate a message in your body. So use them enough to keep you on track. But I would not be worried about, about having too much of them. I would, so let me just make sure I answer this question for this lady, because it says, her fasting ketones, which means morning fasting ketones, are 0.4, have gone from 0.4 to 1.2. So those ketones are great. I would be trying to keep those morning fasting ketones at at least 0.7 and greater if you're trying to lose weight. That Dr. Boz ratio gets you a little better look at things, meaning what's your glucose when your ketones are that high? The reason we check both is because that is a better marker of how well the system is metabolizing energy. That's a better metabolic check is what that Dr. Boz ratio is. So I think mine was 17 today. I know that with a low glucose like that and ketones pretty hearty, that I'm in a good space. So they're going to last a while. Keep watching to see if you can keep those ketones that high. Ketones at least above 0.7 is what I would use those for. All right, exogenous ketones. I was afraid it's not my body making them. Why are they safe? So again, if you are 16 and you're saying, I want to live this perfect life and have no problems, and I'm going to journey on my way to being healthy, good on you. But if you're like the rest of us, who we've gone through a couple of decades where insulin was too much, the weight was on too much, and the amount of signaling that happens inside a body in a state of ketosis is the removal of inflammatory enzymes, the improvement of their mitochondria, the free radical reduction, all the stuff that the marketers are selling you when they're saying do a liver cleanse. Ketones in circulation are more than just a fuel. It's a signaling agent between cells. It is an improvement in how the body takes and changes over the mitotic behavior of DNA. So cell replication is cleaner. And the literature on this is you Google it, ask ChatGPT, they'll find you a bunch of articles. Exogenous ketones get these same outcomes. In fact, we think it does some interesting things in those hormone stuff that I pointed out earlier. So I'm not worried about them being safe or not. I worry about the expense for people. But I mean, just to kind of bring home that story, the expense for her to go on this pilgrimage and come home 50 pounds overweight and a metabolism that, made it possible for a recurrence of her cancer. I mean, that's a disaster. So the cost that it was twice a day she did those ketones while doing, the dream of her life. Anyway, I hope I answered that question. NW Tiger. I was once told a long time ago I had a fatty liver. They have never brought it up again. Don't take any pills. How do I check? So AST, ALT are going to be the fastest way. They should be in the teens. I mean, at least less than 25. AST, ALT, when they get in the 40s, people get chirpy and upset. But those are two liver enzymes that show you. Personally, when I look at people's, and you're going to see a lecture on this coming up in the next few weeks, is that if you want to see if you're insulin resistant, check the liver. And what I mean by that is how quickly does it switch from glucose to ketones? That's what fatty livers don't do. You'll learn more about that in a couple of weeks. So tune in then because I've got great slides for that. All right, let's see. Luann says, do oxalates keep you from ketosis? No, they are a nasty waste product that can hurt, but they don't keep you from ketosis. No. How are other body systems affected by liver issues? Oh, the liver is that central organ that holds on to life for a reason. I mean, it has, regenerating properties and lots of interesting fun facts about the liver, but when the liver's not doing well, if you don't have problems, they're coming soon. I guess that's how to say it. So what happens when you are in ketosis for a few months and you start taking metformin? What does metformin do to it? Does it further help? I just put out a video last week on metformin, so I would have you go back and look at that. That, again, metformin is a great drug, cheap, effective, mostly safe, but that's when I'm talking about a patient whose blood sugar is elevated. And so if your blood sugar is elevated, metformin is worth it. If your blood sugar is not elevated, I wouldn't be taking it. All right, back to questions. Dolores, is it safe for postmenopausal women that are not anemic to take your liver pills? Yes, it's safe. What would be the benefit? Thank you. So last week I did go through this. Maybe I didn't cover the postmenopausal woman the best. Again, ferritin is the thing you're going to want to be checking there, Dolores. Ferritin can be an inflammatory marker. So chronic inflammation can make it high, but you want it at least above 50. You cannot repair the mechanisms of the brain. And that's kind of depression, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, concussions, sleep apnea. I mean, any way that those brain cells are being deteriorated, damaged, or living in inflammatory goo, you need ferritin, you need iron to clean it up. You need iron to make the neurotransmitters that keep you from being depressed, that give you joy, that give you pleasure, and that help you concentrate. I think one of the biggest tragedies is people go take elemental iron, which is iron pills that I would prescribe you, instead of taking liver. Liver's delivery of iron is exponentially better for getting that ferritin at least above 50. So check your ferritin. If you have chronic inflammation, this gets a little murky, but especially if the brain's not working right, the anemia, what you're saying, I'm not anemic, do I still need to take that iron? Anemia is when you've depleted the iron so much and so long that your bone marrow cannot make normal or abundant red blood cells. Do not wait to be anemic to replace the iron. I mean, you should be able to get iron in quality meat. I take iron supplements because the volume of meat that I would have to take to get enough iron is just too much for me to eat. I just don't do it. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, David, I think that's the last one. Yeah, David says, I heard a lot about nitric oxide affecting mitochondria. How does that fit into the picture of the liver? So nitric oxide is a two-sided beast. There are a lot of positives about nitric oxide. I don't know if I'm going to be able to properly explain it all without a little bit of review of my notes. There's been 2 major studies that came out about nitric oxide that I mean, it's been this love-hate relationship on the understanding of nitric oxide, that it's good, it's bad, it's inflammatory, it's post-inflammatory. No, okay, it is really important at a certain spot in the process. Excessive amounts of it are dangerous, but healthy mitochondria should be able to regulate that. Anyway, I'm probably going to mess all that up. It has a lot to do with liver, though. I'm going to not answer that any further because I'm going to screw it up. All right, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. And if you do go see Superman, I would love to know that if you liked the movie. I will update you what I thought next week. See you next week, everybody.